organizing the body. Organizing the body refers to the process of structuring research into a logical and cohesive format. This involves creating an outline or structure for the body of a literature review that organizes the main points, arguments, and evidence. But also, what is thematic format? The thematic format involves organizing the review according to a particular theme or topic. Themes can include any broad topics or ideas that are relevant to the overall research topic. This allows the reader to quickly identify the main ideas, research findings, and opinions related to the literature review topic. So, why is it important to use thematic format or organizing the body in a literature review? The thematic format is important in organizing the body of a literature review because it allows the reader to identify the main themes or topic of the literature being reviewed. By organizing the literature into a distinct themes, the reader can see the relationship between the different pieces of literature, as well as identify the gaps in existing research which provides structure and clarity to the literature for making it easier to read and understand. So for that bullet, the university and the colleges currently adheres to the thematic format. So dahil alam na rin natin, ang research has a great contribution sa institutions or university. Next slide po, please. Sa pag-organize ng body ay nahati ito into two sections. First is covering a general discussion of the topic leading to the research problem. Kumbaga, ito yung main topic ng studies. For second section, will
hindi mo naman naalala eh. Sige, continue.
For second section, we'll cover the related studies. Yung second section naman ay nagsisignify as subtopic or related studies such as evidence and facts. Next slide po, please. So, these are the best example of how will you organize the literature review by simply presenting the main content of the articles. From this example, you will see na sinunod yung two sections kung paano mag-organize ng body of literature. First is merong main topic, then sinundan ng subtopic kung meron man. Optional naman siya kung may subtopic. So take note po, sa pag-organize ng body, do not simply copy-paste contents without thinking of the overall flow of your discussion. Kasi dito makikita kung paano ka-organize yung flow ng body mo. Next slide po. When discussing related studies, you may present each study individually using the WH question, since it can be used as a guide by focusing on specific topics. So, here are the example of WH question na pwede niyong ilagay. First bullet is, who did the study, when, where, or why? For second bullet, how does the solution work? And for third bullet is, what are the strengths? How about the limitation? Through this WH question, it can be used to identify gaps in current research, key concept, pinpoint the relationship between different areas of research, and summarize key findings from the literature. For fourth bullet, in making conclusion, summarize the contribution of the literature sources made to the area of the study because it gives a kind of insight into the relationship between the topic of your review and a larger study area. Next slide po. Lastly naman, sa paggawa ng format of literature review, you must avoid the common mistake na nagagawa ng researcher. First is not employing the best keywords and not identifying the best sources. Since ang keywords are essential for helping your target audience to find your content within search engines, while sources are important for providing reliable information and supporting evidence to back up your arguments. For second bullet, not relating your study findings to the findings of the literature review. Bakit nga ba kailangan tong iwasan? Kasi relating your study findings helps to build upon existing knowledge and provide a context for our study's results. It also allows you to compare and contrast your own results within the published research and identify any discrepancies of gaps that needs to be addressed. For third bullet, relying on secondary rather than primary sources. This is because primary sources are direct sources of information that provide first-hand accounts of the events and experiences. They are often created by people who were directly involved in or witness the event of or issue being studied. For fourth bullet, blindly accepting other researchers' findings rather than critically examining them. By blindly accepting other researchers' findings without critical examination can lead to mistakes and inaccuracies. It is important to challenge and address and assess the evidence and data that have been presented before drawing any conclusions. So that's it for my topic. So let's hear the next topic, which is referencing and citation that will be tackled by Mr. Almanzar.
Thank you. So, next slide, please. So now that we finished to write our research, the last important thing that we need to do is to make sure that we reference and cite the sources that we use in our research correctly. So the citation is a way to tell your readers that certain material in your work came from another source. So next slide, please. Thank you. So why we need citations? So unang-una sa lahat because gusto nating i-avoid yung plagiarism. Pangalawa, para malaman ng readers kung saan nanggaling yung mga information, and that will also add to the reliability of your research. Third is to debauch bad ideas. So iniisip natin commonly, which is common naman talaga na ginagawa natin, sinasite natin yung mga ideas from other literature to support our idea. Pero actually, may mga instances din na pwede nating i-cite yung ibang mga references to debauch their idea because it is incorrect. For example, nung COVID, marami tayong narinig ng mga fake news. Example, nakakagaling ng COVID yung ginger. Pero sa research mo, nalaman mo na hindi totoo yun. So you can cite those literature na nagsabi nun, and you will say on your research na that those research are not true, or according to your findings those research are not true. So you are debauching bad ideas from another research. That is one way we use the citation. Number four, it shows the amount of research that we have. So alam naman natin, the more na makita tayo, pag tinignan natin yung bibliography ng sobrang daming references, alam natin yung effort na binuhos ng researcher to find those references kasi hindi madaling maghanap ng reference. And lastly, to strengthen your work. Again, tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, is the amount of the amount of citations that you have in your research will affect the reliability or the trust ng mga reader sa result na nahanap mo. So next slide please. So when to use citations? So number one, whenever we use quotes. Second, whenever we paraphrase. Number three, whenever we use someone else's ideas. And number four, whenever you make a specific reference. So, kagaya sa ibang related literature, talagang specific nating nare-reference yung mga related studies na halos kaparehas nung atin or nung nire-research natin. So, we need citations especially for that. So, how we are going to cite or reference. So, next slide please. So, yeah, meron dalawang step. Yung una, syempre kailangan nating mag-use ng quotations or paraphrase the cited information. And pangalawa, maglalagay tayo ng in-text citation. So isa-isayin natin yung step na to. Doon muna tayo sa quotations and paraphrase. Kailan tayo magka-quotation, kailan tayo magka-paraphrase. So next slide please. Yan. So quotations, kapag kinopya natin yung exact words or exact sentence from the original text. So meron tayong example dito, yung original text, informatics in general studies the intersection of people, information, and technology systems. And may kita natin dun sa research niya na kinopya niya talaga yung exact phrase from the reference. So the researcher needs to use quotations. So yun yung mga instances na gagamit tayo ng quotations. Pero binanggit din dun sa ating module and sa ibang references na although pwede tayong kumopya ng exact phrase basta gagamit ng quotation, it is ethical pa rin na huwag tayong kukopya ng buong paragraph or at least lalagpas ng 3 sentences na talagang kinopya lang natin tapos quotation kasi hindi siya good practice. So next next slide please. So is when we paraphrase lang natin yung thought from the original text and we use it in our study. So for example dito, kagaya nung parehas na original text, pero this time, hindi niya na kinopya word for word or yung exact phrase, kundi in-explain niya na in a different manner. So this is a paraphrase and this is the more recommended way kapag ka nagsasite tayo ng ibang sources rather than using quotations. Kadalasan ginagamit lang talaga yung quotations, especially sa title. Those talagang need natin siyang copyhin word for word, so we use quotations when we reference those texts. Pero when in terms na dun sa results ng study, mas maganda kung ipa-paraphrase natin siya. So next slide please. So let's go naman doon sa in-text citation. Tayo nung na-reference natin or gumamit tayo ng quotation kung nakita natin hindi talaga siya appropriate na i-paraphrase, paano naman natin siya gagawa ng in-text citation. So katulad na nakita natin kanina, meron sila doong in-text citation na naka-enclose sa open and close. So may iba't ibang klase pero tayo ay yung Harvard system. So ano ba yung Harvard system? So katulad na nakita kanina, yun yung naka-enclose by open and close parentheses. And nakalagay yung name ng author, year ng publication, and kung meron mang page kung saan natin siya na-reference. So dito yung different types ng format kapag ginagamit natin yung Harvard system. So pag isa lang yung name ng author, yung kanyang surname, tapos yung open close parentheses, yung year kung kailan niya pinublish yung certain publication. Pagka naman yung author's name ay hindi nag-appear sa uh, yun, yung pag yung author's name na nun does not occur in the text, so may kita na, ay, ito naman pala ginagamit naman siya pag may multiple, sorry, no, pag may multiple na more
Maraming
than 3.
authors. Yeah.
Opo, may ginagamit ng et al. Tapos cited, halimbawa sa isang sentence na yon, pinagsama natin yung two different ideas from two different literature. So pwede tayong gumamit ng end clause. Yan, no? Tulad na makikita natin, author, end clause, or kapag more than 3, pwede rin comma. So author, date, comma, author, date, tap, comma, yung author and date. So tatlo yung sinite niya dito. Pero kung dalawa lang, pwede tayong gumamit ng end. So author, date, and tapos author, date. So ganun po ginagamit yung Harvard system of in-text citation. So next slide please. Yan. So pwede rin po na halimbawa meron tayong nakitang literature na nag-cite sa another literature. Halimbawa, lalo na po sa related studies, meron silang RRL. Siyempre, nakita natin na yung RRL dun sa reference literature natin, ay pwede rin natin ganito naman yung magiging format na in-text citation. So, yung year, tapos quoted, ay yung name ng author. Yung format dito, depende pa rin sa tinanggit natin kanina, kung one author, two author, or more than 3 authors. Pero ang mahalaga dito, yung clause sa dulo. Huwag natin kakalimutan na quoted in Parry and Carter 2003. So, minention niya pa rin kung kaninong paper kinote yung literature na yun. So, yun yung gagawin natin tayo ng RRL din na nire-research natin or reference natin. Tapos sumunod naman, citing an author who has published more than one item in the same year. So lalo na po pag journal, kung the same author with the same journal but different date, kasi nagpa-publish siya every monthly or every quarter. So, tas sinite natin yung work niya. Ganito naman yung mangyayari. Kahit isang beses lang banggitin yung author, pero kailangan i-mention yung year. Okay. Kung the same year, gamit ng A and B. So, dito siya isa-cite kapag yun. So, next naman po ay yung sa sige, next slide po. Nag-toggle. So, katulad po ng binanggit ko kanina, ito po yun. One author, pwede kayong pumili sa dalawa, author, date, or nasa labas ng parenthesis yung surname ng author, then date nasa loob ng enclosed parenthesis. Tapos pag two author, yan, pwede ulit kayong pumili kung yung year by nasa loob ng parenthesis o magkasama sila pero separated by comma. Kung 3 authors or editors, yan, pwede rin kayong pumili kung nasa loob ng parenthesis ulit yung date or yung lahat sila nasa loob ng parenthesis but separated by comma. Then pag 4 or more authors,
Et al.
yung gagamit na po ng et al. So yan po yung siguro familiar na tayo kasi nagagamit natin yan, no, since senior high school. So next slide please. So meron pang isang klase ng citation na baka napansin natin or karaniwan na kung kayo po ay nag-browse sa Wikipedia. Halos parang ganito yung kanilang ginagamit na system na nakalagay lang yung number nung citation and then nakalagay na sa footnote kung ano yung information about dun sa reference. So ang tawag naman dito ay Vancouver numbering system. So katulad na makikita niyo po dito sa sample text natin, meron lang tayong 1, open close parenthesis, and then 2. Tapos nasa footnote na po yung information
Yung
about
1 at saka 2.
Next slide please. Ayan. So may kita po natin dito, may maliban dun sa binanggit natin kanina na citation and referencing, may iba-iba't ibang pang klase. Merong Association for Computing Machinery or ACM na format. Merong APA, which is yung pinaka ginagamit. Meron ding IEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineer na format. Katulad nan din po siya halos nung nasa Vancouver numbering system. With with
Tapos dito
naman
sa
siya.
atin, sa PUP, ang gamit natin APA.
Actually, yun po yung mostly used po talaga. And then, next slide please. Pasuyin na lang po sa next slide po. Thank you. Ay, so, actually po, ayan. So, ang pinagkaiba po pala ng Vancouver numbering system doon sa Harvard system. Sa Harvard system, pagka sa bibliography, naka-arrange siya in alphabetical order. Pero pag Vancouver numbering system, naka-arrange siya ng pagkasunod-sunod kung paano mo sila binanggit. So kung halimbawa na unang binanggit yung reference na to, siya dapat yung nasa una. So yung last part po natin ay yung bibliography at tulad na nakita nyo, wala ng PPT. Sobrang dami po yung rules ng bibliography. And I think siguro kailangan mo ng years of experience to really memorize those rules. Pero thankfully, meron na tayong mga tools. Ano na sinabi ni Ma'am, total APA din yung ginagamit sa PUP. Meron na tayong mga tools na magpapadali ng buhay natin when it comes to making citations and bibliography. So, ipapakita ko po yung mag-share screen ako. Kaya naman. Thank you. And tapos, kung kayo po ay user ng Word, siguro may ilan na sa atin na hindi ma-detect yung aking screen. Sige po. Sige po, entire screen na lang. Ayan po. So, kung tayo po ay user ng meron po tayo and then po dito sa insert nandito na yung depend kang book, a book section, a journal article. Kung mapapansin nyo, i-fill upan nyo na lang yung kanyang yung boxes, no? Kung ano yung mga information na yon sa literature. So maggawa tayo ng example, yung example dito sa module, halimbawa ito. So yung author, tapos yung title, and then yung journal, tapos yung year ng 2001, and then kung ano yung pages na ginamit. So, kung wala, okay lang naman siya na walang pages. For example na lang, meron tayo nilagay na pages na. So, yun siya. So, every time na halimbawa gagamitin nyo to, kayo dito sa citation, and then ang kagandahan din po dito, kapag gumawa na kayo ng inyong bibliography, pwede na po siya mag-auto-generate ng bibliography. So ito po yun, auto-generated na yung ating bibliography.
Ano to, extension ni Microsoft or?
Hindi po ma'am, built-in po.
Built-in na siya? Okay.
Opo.
Good.
Hindi nyo lang po nakita kasi isa lang yung reference.
Magandang ano to.
Opo. So, hindi na kayo basta pag may citation, add new source, select kung ang literature. Actually, meron niya rin po dito ang recording.
Diretso na siya, no? Tapos, pwede mo pang iset yung style. Alagay doon APA. That's good. Okay.
Opo. Ay, yun po pala, isa pang feature nito. Marami po dito nga. So, kung, yun po, ito, kanina may IKE, kung gamit kayo na IKE. Pero ito po yung default na APA kasi yun talaga yung pinaka-ginagamit. So, ayan po siya. So, mas madali na siyang mas madali ng cited sources ninyo at hindi nyo na kailangan i-memorize kung paano yung format.
Correct.
Ito naman po ay gumagamit ng Google Docs. Yan. Meron din po sa ating Google Doc. So sa Google Docs naman po, punta naman kayo dito sa Tools, tapos Citations, Tools, tapos Citations, and then lalabas po ito. Pwede din kayong ulit pumili, mas onti nga lang po pero APA. Then pwede na kayong ng citation, yung anong klase ng then fill upan. Ayan. So, yung form dito sa site. Wala sa Word. Yung ni information about that book. Ganito rin po halimbawa meron na website. Lagay natin yung information about kung may gusto tayo ay Word, pwede kayo mag-click na in-text citation. Hindi nyo na problemahin yung et al or anumang mga format kasi siya na rin yung mag-auto-check. Po sa Word, pwede nyo rin pong reference, yan. Naka-ano na rin po yan. Ayan. Pwede na rin siyang tayo ng ano. So, yun po. Pwede nyo nang i-access malagay bibliography. So, yan pag madami. So, make sure nyo lang po na i-fill up nyo yung mga information kasi ganito mangyayari sa inyong bibliography pag kulang-kulang. So, ayun po. So, sana naka-help siya na info para sa next na research nyo, hindi na kayo mapatagal sa bibliography, hindi na kayo mapatagal sa in-text citation at ma-manage nyo ng mas organized yung mga references. So, that's all po sa aming report and thank you po.
Actually, that's very useful, ha? Magandang tip yun. Okay. So, tapos na yung group nyo.
Yes po, ma'am. Yes po.
Okay. So, yung next. Ready na yung next. Ayan. Yun nga pala yung hinahanap ko kanina. Tuloy nyo. Right. So, yung natapos ay yung conducting a research. So, next na yung group 5 para sa unit 3, yung research methodology.
Hello po, ma'am. Rinig po ako.
Ayan. Okay.
Rinig po, ma'am.
Yes, rinig na.
So, yun po. Good afternoon po to all of us. So, we are the group 5 and we're going to discuss Unit 3 that is all about research methodology. Next slide, please. So I'm going to discuss the research classifications. Next slide. Different authors provide different ways on how to classify research. And research classification are based on three perspectives: the application, the objectives, and the inquiry mode. Under po ng application, there are three types of research: the basic research, the applied research, and the developmental research. While under the objective research naman po, there are four types of research: the descriptive, exploratory, causal, and non-causal research. While in the inquiry mode naman po, there are three types of research: the quantitative, qualitative, and mixed research na i-discuss ko po later on. Next slide, please. So, types of research. Next slide. According po sa diagram kanina, ang first po na type of research is yung application po. Application of the research study. So, yung application po, it concerns the purpose or objective of why the researcher is conducting the research and how the result of the research can be used or utilized. While the objectives in our undertaking the research focuses more on the specific outcome of the research being sought and the depth of the scope. While the third type of research naman po, the inquiry mode employed, it focuses more on the type of information used in the research. Next slide, please. So, according po sa diagram kanina, meron pong application. The first type of research po is the basic research, or also known as pure research. So the basic research involves developing and testing theories and hypotheses that are intellectually challenging. The knowledge produced through this type of research is sought in order to add to the existing body of research methods. So this type of research focuses on the search for truth or the development of different theories po. Ito po yung kind of research na nag-a-arise po out of curiosity na kahit wala naman pong practical application at the present or in the future. Yung main motivation naman po ng research na to is para po mag-expand ng knowledge of a study and not to create or invent something out of it. And this type of research po is sometimes called as fundamental research. And it is the basis for many commercial products and applied research. So next slide, please. The second type of research based on the application naman po is the applied research. This type of research is conducted to solve specific practical applications, and it can be exploratory but is usually descriptive. Ito pong type of research design naman na po to is it seeks to solve a specific problem. And nagpro-provide din po siya ng innovative solutions po to certain issues na nakakapag-affect sa certain individual, group, or society. Relevant po yung kind of research na to, and it can be seen in different fields like the field of medicine, education, business, engineering, psychology, health, etc. So yung pangatlo naman po is the developmental research. Developmental research is a systematic work drawing on existing knowledge gained from research and practical experience that is directed to produce new materials, products, or devices, to installing new processes, systems, and services, to improving substantial those already produced or installed. Yung developmental research po, considered po siya under the part of applied research. And it is defined as systematic study of designing, developing, and evaluating instructional programs, processes, and products po na nagmi-meet po ng certain criteria of consistency and effectivity.
Yeah.
This kind of research is important particularly po in the field of instructional technology. Next slide, please. So, under naman po ng objectives, there are types of research based on objectives. The first is the descriptive research. It attempts to describe systematically a situation, problem, phenomenon, service, or program, or provides information or describes attitude towards an issue. So, from the name itself po, descriptive, meaning that it focuses more on the what of the research subject than the why of the research subject. In other words po, it describes the subject of the research without discussing why it happens. And it is a research method po describing the characteristic of a phenomenon being studied. The next is the non-causal research. It attempts to discover or establish the existence of a relationship interdependence between two or more aspects of a situation. It is also known as correlational research po. Correlational or
Corollary.
in other words po,
Nagko-correlate.
relationship.
Yeah.
Apo. So, it investigates relationships between variables without the researcher controlling or manipulating any of those variables. So, the direction of the relationship between variables can be either positive or negative. For example po, there are two variables, the height and the weight. For the positive correlation, for example, as the height increases, the weight also increases. So, pares po silang positive. So, yung isa naman po is negative correlation. So, as the height increases, the weight decreases. Para pong positive plus negative po. Ganun, negative correlation. So, next slide please. The next is the causal research. It attempts to clarify why and how there is a relationship between two or more aspects of a situation or phenomenon. It is also known as explanatory research. Ito po yung kind of research that explores why something occurs when limited information is available. It helps to understand a given topic, how or why a particular phenomenon is occurring, and predict future occurrences. It can be explained po as a cause and effect model po. Next is the exploratory research. Undertaken to explore an area where little is known or to investigate the possibilities of undertaking a particular research study. So ito pong kind of research na po to, it investigates research questions that have not previously been studied in depth. Yung kind of research po ito is frequently qualitative in nature po. So next slide please. So under naman po ng inquiry mode employed, there are also four types of research. Four types of approach. The first approach is the structured approach. Appropriate to determine the extent of a problem, issue, or phenomenon by quantifying the variation. So structured approach po is classified as quantitative research. And it is everything that forms the research process, the objectives, the design, the sample, and the question that is predetermined. Next is the unstructured approach. Allows flexibility in all aspects of the research process. The objective is to describe the variation in a phenomenon, situation, or attitude. Ito naman pong unstructured approach, it is qualified as qualitative naman po. It is predominantly used po to explore its nature. It defines the diversity in a phenomenon, issue, problem, or attitude towards an issue. For example po, ang example po ng structured approach is yung historical enumeration of events, description of an observed situation, description of working condition in a particular industry. Next slide, please. So the next approach is the mixed approach. So from the word itself po, mixed. So combination po siya ng both quantitative and qualitative data na nako-collect and na-analyze mo within the same study in order to answer the research question. Mixed approach po is used if the research process suggests that quantitative or qualitative data alone will not sufficiently answer the research question. This is often used po in behavioral, health, and social sciences. Next slide, please. So, yung research design and research method naman po. Next slide. Research may also be classified according to the type of data being collected or by the research design employed. Before po, akala ko po dati yung research design tsaka research method, iisa lang po sila. Pero
Magkaiba sila.
different concept nga po pala sila nung inaral ko po itong report. So, yung research design po, it refers to the logical structure of the inquiry.
Correct.
It is the overall structure of the research project. Yung focus po ng research design, it focuses on what type of study is planned and what kind of results are expected from the research. And based po siya sa research question or research problem. While the research method naman po, it specified the mode of data collection. Yung research method naman po, yung various processes, yung procedures, and tools po na ginagamit to collect and analyze data. And it focuses on what type of method are more suitable to collect and analyze the evidence needed po. It usually depends on the research design naman po.
Correct.
So next slide please.
May idagdag ko lang just like kayo kasi nasa IT, nasa CS kayo, no? And you are exposed to creating application, exploring designs, no? So, just like yung mga ginagawa nating application na meron silang representation wherein parang halimbawa database yan, meron tayong database design, kung halimbawa ang application yan, meron tayong design schema, no? O kaya kung sa architect, meron silang plan or blueprint, no? Ganon din yung research, no? So, sa research, yung pinaka-blueprint ng ating research, ang tawag doon ay yung research design, no? So, para siyang, kumbaga parang flowchart or parang pinaka-plano, yan. So, nakapokus yun doon. While yun nga yung method has something to do with data collection. Ayan. Dagdag ko lang. Okay, continue.
Under naman po ng research design, the research design can be classified onto three different designs. The first design is the experimental design.
Yeah.
In an experimental design, individuals are selected from the population of interest and are randomly assigned to two groups, the treatment group and the control group. So dito po, yung experimental design assumes that since the two groups are drawn from the same population and randomly assigned, they are similar in every aspect, except that one group receives treatment. The only difference between these two groups is the treatment, and this is called selection bias po. For example po, ito po example sa instructional material po. Sa isa pong vocational training program, there are two groups of students. The first group or the treatment group are the student who have been trained po para dun sa program na yon. And the second group or the control group are the student who have not been trained for the program. So, yung tinatawag po na selection bias is yung para po dun sa treatment group since sila lang po yung train para po dun sa program na yun. So, this design is the best way to ensure po na that the treatment group and control group are really comparable. So, the next design po is the quasi-experimental or post-hoc. This is similar to experimental design because the researcher develops a comparison group which is similar to the treatment group but not necessarily equivalent. So, it aims to establish a cause and effect relationship between an interdependent and dependent variable. So, yung participants po dito are pre-assigned to groups based on some predetermined characteristics or quality. Group assignments have already taken place before experimenting begins, and the researcher has no control over who is assigned to which group. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the last type of design under the research design is the non-experimental design. In this design, it does not compare one group with another but describes the relationship between an intervention and its effect on the population of interest. Ito naman pong design na to, it examines social phenomenon without direct manipulation of the condition that the subject experience. Nagpro-provide din po ng understanding ang design na to context process, events, or situation, and it explains why results occurred, which may be essential for building result chains. So next slide, please. So the next topic is the problem conceptualization that will be discussed by Elisha Kiday.
Hello, audible po.
Oo.
So, ayun. Thank you, Kyle. So, next is problem conceptualization. Next slide, please. So, research always starts with a research problem. A major problem is usually stated clearly, followed by specific questions that need to be answered by the research. So, yung first and makakonsider ng karamihan na mahirap o yung challenging part of research is yung conceptualization, which is the art and practice of discovery. It takes a lot of time and effort to conduct research. Kaya yung dapat piliin natin na topic is kung saan tayo interesado. Dahil mahirap naman yung mahirap yung magiging process and mahihirapan lang din tayo as researchers if hindi tayo interesado sa topic na pipiliin. And once na naging maayos and successful yung pagpili ng topic, yung progress sa mga susunod na steps ay maaaring maging maayos na rin and mas madali. Next is doing something trivial by selecting a problem that has no conceptual basis of apparent importance in the field can lead to a frustrating experience and one that provides no closure. Kaya, ayun nga, kailangan na yung research problem na pipiliin natin is alam natin na doable or makakaya na masagot. Hindi yung pipiliin mo is yung existing na or nasagot na ng ibang research. Kasi kapag ganun yung nangyari, parang nagsasayang ka na lang ng oras. Next slide, please. So, sources of research problem. Next slide, please. We have here the personal experience kung saan marami tayong makukuhang information na maaaring maging important source ng research problem sa ating day-by-day basis or sa ating personal experience na magagamit natin sa ating research. And next is curiosity and creative ideas. These two can help po sa pag-capture ng ibang ideas and thoughts na maaaring magamit sa innovation process ng research. Next is state of knowledge in field. And lastly, relevant literature, kung saan sa mga existing studies ay may mga recommendation na part. Kung makikita natin doon yung nilalagay ng authors na new findings and existing gaps na pwede rin na maging source ng research problem. Next slide, please. So, next is considerations in selecting a research problem. Next slide, please. So, here the following naman po na kailangan natin i-consider sa pagpili ng research problem. First is yung interest, which is yung pinaka-importante, and katulad nga po ng nabanggit ko kanina, is yung mahirap yung magiging process if hindi ka naman interesado sa topic. Also, magiging challenging din siya. Kasi required yung motivation, yung time and energy ng researcher para matapos yung study. And next is magnitude. Sa magnitude naman po, in order to estimate yung kinakailangan gawin to complete the planned study, you should be knowledgeable about the research process. Mas okay if magfo-focus na lang sa doable or precise and mas transparent topic area. Next is measurement of concept. Dito po, kailangan natin i-make sure na naiintindihan natin yung indicators and methods of measurement for any concepts na gagamitin if quantitative yung study. Next is level of expertise. Importante din po na magkaroon ng necessary level of expertise para sa study that you are proposing, dahil mahirap nga po kung hindi ka naman expert sa gagawin mo and hindi siya pasok sa level of expertise, mahirapan ka na tapusin yung study. Next is relevance. So, we have to decide on a topic na importante or relevant sa career mo. Make sure din na yung research na gagawin will fill in any gaps in the body of knowledge. Then, pwede din itong mag-improve ng understanding or mag-help na sa mga existing studies na. And next is availability of data. If your topic requires gathering data galing sa secondary sources, katulad ng mga office records, client records, census, or sa ibang mga published reports, kailangan mo na siyang i-verify kung available and accessible ba ito sa desired format na kailangan mo sa study. Then, next is the ethical issue. Importante din po ito sa pag-consider ng pag-formulate ng research problem. Kasi sa pag-consider po nito, makikita natin yung study population may be negatively impact by some questions na maaaring directly or indirectly na masagot. Then, possible din na denied an intervention. And next is asked to give sensitive and private information. And lastly, are expected to be simply experimental like guinea pigs. Next slide, please. So, next is research problem. A research problem is defined as an area of concern na nagre-require ng meaningful understanding sa specific topic, condition, or contradiction. And yung research is conducted dahil sa problem na kailangan i-address or sa mga tanong na kailangan sagutin dahil sa knowledgeable gap na nakuha mo sa mga existing study. One common mistake is to state titles first bago subukan i-identify yung mga component ng title. Titles can be changed even after the study has been completed. Pero yung research problem, hindi na siya pwede baguhin. Kasi kapag binago na siya, ibig sabihin, yung buong study is kailangan mo rin baguhin. The title turns into a significant road sign in research. It is a specific concept that the researchers can continually improve as the project proceeds. Here, meron po dito tayo yung useful advice for creating a title provided by Wilkinson. So first is be brief and avoid wasting words. And next is eliminate unnecessary words katulad ng an approach to, a study of, and so forth. And third, use a single or double title. For example po is yung at an ethnography, understanding a child's perception of form. Next is consider a title that no longer than 12 words, eliminating most articles and prepositions. Next is make sure that it includes the focus or topic of the study. Next slide, please. So, yung research problem ay importante dahil ni-establish nito yung importance ng topic and nakakatch niya yung attention and interest ng readers. Yung pag-formulate or pag-develop ng research problem is a challenging part. Lalo na po karamihan sa mga bagong researchers pa lang. However, pagkatapos naman ma-identify yung research problem, magkakaroon na ng basis and direction sa pagpili ng appropriate methodology and sa pag-accomplish ng ibang part ng research. So, we have here the 5 characteristics to consider as basis in stating problems or objectives using the acronym SMART. S for specific. Dapat isa-add ng questions yung mga variables that will be evaluated sa study. And next is M for measurable. Yung mga variables na involved can be subjected to measurement with any level of measurement at sa paggamit ng mga measuring instruments. And A for attainable. Maaring masagot ng yung tanong or the objective can be attained because the needed data ay maaaring makolekta at suriin sa pag-appropriate sa paggamit ng appropriate tools. And next is relevant. So, yung mga result po na makukuha dahil sa data is can be obtained sa pagsunod sa scientific procedures and techniques. And lastly, T for time-bound. So, kailangan po natin na may sundan na time frame sa bawat activity na research para matapos siya sa specific time. Next slide, please. So, next is creating the problem statement. Usually, yung problem statement is only 1 or 2 sentences lang siya para i-explain yung problem na i-address sa study. So, in general po, yung problem statement, i-outline niya yung negative points sa current situation and i-explain kung bakit ito mahalaga. Next is, sa unang paragraph ng problem statement, dapat ma-identify din yung issue. Here po, dapat the researcher must choose between a problem that comes from a research or a practical problem. Kailangan din po i-cite and provide yung evidence for the problem from the literature. Next slide, please. Here we have the purpose of a problem statement. So first is to introduce the reader to the importance of the topic being studied. The reader is oriented to the significance of the study and the research question or hypothesis to follow. Next is places the problem into a particular context that defines the parameters of what is to be investigated. Next is provides framework for reporting the results and indicates what is probably necessary to conduct the study and explain how the findings will present this information. Next slide, please. So, we have here po yung wrong way ng pag-formulate ng research problem. So, yung sabi, yung common drawback daw sa pag-define ng research problem is yung pagbase sa sa proposed software tool to be developed. Which is, ito po yung nakikita natin ngayon. And in this case po, pagkatapos magsagawa ng literature review, which is yung nasa step 1, and perceiving something bilang ang research problem. Bali, dumediretso na yung researcher na gumawa ng software tool, then as solution. Ito na po yung sa step 2. And without defining ng malinaw yung problem and the variables under the study. Kaya po parang nagkakaproblema kapag tinanong yung researchers about a certain topic. Wala siyang masasagot kasi hindi niya na-formulate ng maayos yung mga literature review, yung mga related studies na nagamit. And dahil nag-proceed sila agad sa software na kailangan gawin. And next slide, please. So, we have here naman po yung research problem and solution formulation. So, sabi nga, as much as possible, prior sa formulation ng research problem, kailangan maglaan tayo ng maraming oras sa pag-review ng mga literature na gagamitin natin, which is yung nasa step 1. Then, nang ginagamit yung mga variable resources para makahanap ng importanteng documents and information. Next is the different problems and concerns na na-address sa mga nakalap na literature as well as the gaps found ay nagsisilbing foundation para sa research problem that has been formulated. From here po, the researcher must conduct another literature review, which is yung nasa step 2. This time, para ma-identify yung existing solutions na na-develop at na-formulate para i-address or makatulong sa pagsagot ng research problem, ginagawa ito upang malaman what is already in place and spot any gaps. Additionally po, itong second literature evaluation ay isinasagawa upang maiwasan yung pag-ulit na sa mga existing solution na nagawa sa ibang study. Then, pagtapos po ng dalawang naunang step, doon na po dapat saka gagawin yung software tool or yung implementation ng solution, which is yung nasa step 3. And then, next slide, please. Next is how the problem differs from the other part of research. Next slide, please. So, yung research problem, ito po yung educational issue or problem sa isang study. Ito din yung main issue sa research na hinahanapan natin ng sagot o yung kinakailangan natin ng sagot. Next is research topic. Ito naman po yung broad subject matter na ina-address natin sa study. And next is yung purpose. Ito naman po yung major intent or objective ng study natin. Next is yung research questions. Ito yung mga katanungan na gustong masagot or matakal ng mga researchers sa kanilang study. Na kapag nasagot na, saka na pwede makapag-provide ng solution sa broader research problem. Next slide, please. Next is locating the research problem naman po that will be presented by Mr. Valencia.
Okay.
Hello. Good evening. Rinig po ba ako, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, so ang topic ko po today ay locating the research problem. So, first things first, ano nga muna, i-define muna natin kung ano ang isang research problem. So, in a research setting or even in a real life setting, ang research problem ay isang area of concern or isang bagay na kailangan mong improve or isang kahirapan na kailangang mawala or isang literal na isang tanong lang na nag-exist either in paper, in literature, in theory, or in practice na pwede nating gawa ng solusyon. So sa may sasabihin po kayo, ma'am?
Sabi ko, yap. It's a big yap.
Ay, okay. Okay, so as we go on creating our research paper, meron tayong mga babasahing mga research papers. Then, syempre, para sa ating literature review. So, paano nga ba natin hahanapin yung research problem sa mga papers na yun? So, here are 4 questions you can ask yourself para malaman natin yun. Next slide. So, unang tanong is, what is the issue or problem? So, syempre, ang unang mong tatanungin habang binabasa mo yung isang research paper is, ano nga ba yung issue na ina-address ng paper na to? Is it improving an algorithm or comparing something to another thing? So, isang issue yon. Isang paraan yun para mahanap mo kung ano yung underlying problem na ina-address ng paper na yon. Next, what controversy leads to the need for a study? So, anong mga bagay yung nagdala sa atin para gawin yung research na yun? Meron bang real life event na nangyari na kinailangan gawan ng study? For example, nangyari ang COVID-19. So, from the existence of COVID-19 in our real world, ang daming na push na mga research dyan or study about it. So it's a controversy na naka-lead sa paggawa ng isang research paper. Next, what concern is being addressed behind the study? So again, anong bagay yung kinakailangan nating solusyonan gamit yung research na yan, yung study na yan. Lastly, is there such a sentence such as the problem in the study is? So ito yung pinakamadaling way para hanapin yung research problem sa isang paper. Hanapin mo lang yung statement na yan or anything similar sa statement na yan and you can find your research problem sa paper na yan. Next slide. So, even though we have a research problem na, meron pa tayong isang bagay na kailangan tanungin sa sarili natin. Whether it is, should I research this? Meron kang sabihin natin problema. Pero kailangan mo munang malaman kung quote-unquote, researchable yung problem na yun. Take note, meron tayong yung sinabi kanina ni Elisha na SMART, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Ito yung magiging basehan mo para malaman mo kung researchable yung isang problem o hindi. So, meron tayong mga tanong ulit na pwede natin itanong sa sarili natin para malaman natin kung researchable ang isang problem. Next slide. So, unang-una, can you study the problem? Medyo halata na to. Pero if you cannot study a problem, for example, sabi natin estudyante ka pa lang, tapos gusto mong gawan ng research ang Large Hadron Collider. Sabi natin yun yung area na gusto mong i-researchan. As it stands now, wala ka pang paraan para mapag-aralan yung Large Hadron Collider in a physical setting. So, kung yun yung topic of research mo, medyo mahihirapan ka. And thus, it could be deemed as unresearchable. Next, do you have access to the research site? Ito, sobrang common na problem na nararanasan nating mga estudyante, which is wala tayo access sa mga website kung saan nandun na publish ang mga research papers like Springer, ResearchGate, mga tulad nun. Basically, if wala tayo access dun sa resources natin, it's gonna be very hard to make a research out of it, diba? Next is, do you have the time, resources, and skills to carry out the research? Again, medyo obvious na to. Meron ka bang oras? Meron ka bang kagamitan? At meron ka pang abilidad para gawin yung research na yun? Una, time. So, ang nararanasan natin ngayon dito sa pag-aaral natin is meron tayong mga deadline. So, of course, yung mga research papers din yan, kung sabihin natin gumagawa ng dissertations or kahit mga college thesis na, lagi may mga deadline yan. So, kung meron kang isang research topic na possibly sobrang haba ng kailangang panahon para ma-conduct yun, siyempre may hirapan kang patapos yung research na yun. So, keep in mind lagi na may time frame ka lagi para ma-conduct yung research na yun. Next is resources. Tulad sa naunang tanong kanina, isang example yun ng isang resource, which is yung research site. May access ka ba doon? Kung wala, medyo mahirap paghanap ng literature related sa research mo. Sa pag-conduct mo ng experiments, meron ka bang kagamitan? May equipment ka? Kung wala, it's gonna be very hard to do an experiment. Kung sabihin natin kung meron kang kagamitan, meron kang research site and all that stuff, may tauhan ka ba para tulungan ka sa paggawa nun? Kung wala rin, medyo mahihirapan ka rin. Skills to carry out the research. Let's say na more or less focused on technology yung research mo. Pero linguist ka. Hindi ko naman sinasabi na imposible mangyari yun. Pero like I said, it's gonna be very hard to do that research. So keep in mind lagi kung anong mga meron ka bago gumawa ng isang study. Time, resource, and skills. Tandaan lagi yun. Should you study the problem?
That's a question.
Hello? Nawala po ako, ma'am.
Yes. Dinig.
Saan po ako huli narinig?
Should you study
Nawala
the
po ako
problem?
saglit. Okay po. Should you study the problem? Does it advance knowledge? Does it contribute to practice? So this is more of a parang medyo meta na question na pwede natin tanongin sa sarili natin. Etong ginagawa mong study, nakakatulong ba to sa pagpapalaganap ng kaalaman ng mga tao? Nakakatulong ba siya sa sa pagko-conduct ng actual na practice ng bagay na nire-research mo? For example, if magre-research ka about COVID-19. Sabihin natin you're gonna research something on preventing COVID-19 in, sabihin natin, train stations. So, maghahanap ka ng mga paraan, gagawa ng study kung paano mababawasan ang paglaganap ng COVID-19 sa isang train station whereas madaming tao doon. Ang tanong natin ngayon is, nagawa mo ngayong studying yun, may na-advance ka ba sa kaalaman ng mga tao? Kasi ang makikita mo ngayon kapag nag-research ka about sa topic na yun, madami nang magawa nun. So, yung mga kaalaman na yon na nagawa ng mga previous studies about doon, alam na ng mga tao. So, technically, you didn't advance any kind of information with your study. So, although meron kang nagawang study, wala ang nabigay wala ang na-contribute na bagong information sa society natin, technically. Ayun. So, next slide. Next is, will your study fill a gap or void in the existing literature? This is another one of very obvious question kasi laging natatanong sa atin ito, yung research gap natin. Meron bang kakulangan sa isang research paper or sa isang practice na kailangan nating i-fill? For example, merong in the field of technology. Sige, sabihin natin in the field of technology. Madami nang na develop na artificial intelligence sa panahon natin ngayon, pero dati wala pa masyado. So, in the creation of the artificial intelligence, dati to. In previous times, like sabihin natin 1800s or 1900s, the creation of an artificial intelligence fills a gap in technology that was not previously there. So, nung time na yon is hindi pa nag-exist ang artificial intelligence like we know of it today. Wala pang mga tulad ng ChatGPT or mabsay mo yan, yung AI na yan. Wala pa nag-exist na yan. And so, creation of that artificial intelligence fills the gap that does not exist in that particular field, and therefore, that is a good research. So, tanong nyo muna sa sarili nyo kung ganun din ba yung topic ko or ganun din ba yung study ko. Ayan. Will your study fill a gap or void in the... naulit. Naulit po siya, I'm sorry. Will your study replicate a past study, yet examine different participants in different research sites? This is not a hindi siya ganun ka-unusual na tanong. Madalas din siyang tanongin natin sa sarili natin kapag gumagawa tayo ng research. Meron na bang gumawa ng study na to? Itong research ko na ba to na gagawin ko, nag-exist na ba? And if so, anong gagawin ko para maiba yung research na to? Sabihin natin, you conducted a study on males, why not conduct the study on females? That's something new, and that's a different participant in a different method. So that could be a possible good research. So, next slide. Will your study extend past research or examine the topic more thoroughly? So, tulad nung tinanong natin kanina sa sarili natin, you take the research, you're gonna conduct it in a different way, with different participants or a different study, or you can do na you take this research, i-extend mo pa yon sa kung anong ginawa ng past research na yon. Kung ano yung sabihin nating kakulangan ng research na yon, you're gonna fill that gap. I-fill mo yon, i-extend mo pa. Commonly mahanap po to, itong yung sagot sa tanong na to sa mga research recommendations. Like sabihin natin na sa isang study kung saan nag-survey ka, may recommendation doon na sinabing better if nasama itong mas malaking population na to, mas malaking sample size pa. You can then therefore get that study, get that research, and do what that recommendation said. You extended past what the research did. And you particularly examine yung topic na yon ng masinsinan pa kasi mas malawak pa yung range yung nag-research mo kaysa dun sa past research. So will your study give voice to people not heard, silenced, or rejected in society? This is a very timely na concern kasi as we all know, in these times, madaming mga tao pa rin yung hindi pa rin nabibigyan ng boses or nabibigyan ng chance para mag-speak up sa ating society. So if your study gives them a chance para gawin yon, para bigyan tulong ng mga tao sa ating society or bigyan ng boses, bigyan sila ng opportunity para mailabas nila yung sarili nila sa atin. That is a good research. So will your study inform practice? Again, very obvious. If you cannot put your research into practice, it is not a good research. If yung ginawa mong study, sabihin natin is survey lang siya, pero information na nakuha mo doon is hindi siya nagagamit. Wala ring pinanggagamitan yun, yung information na yun. It's not gonna be a very good research kasi hindi mo siya nagagamit in actual practice. So what do we still need to know? Again, very obvious na question na tatanungin natin sa sarili natin. Ano yung kailangan pa nating malaman about this certain thing? A very common example is COVID-19. You make researches about COVID-19 to determine ano pa ba yung kailangan nating malaman about sa sakit na to. And from that little question, kapag nasagot mo yun, spawns a different number of questions again with a different number of solutions. So, with that singular question, mas na-extend mo pa yung research about COVID-19. Next slide. What else do we need to know to improve practice? So, similar lang dun sa previous question. Ano nga ba yung kailangan pa nating malaman? Pero ngayon, in the context of ano pa kailangan nating malaman para ma-improve yung paggamit or paggawa ng isang bagay na to. So, tanong mo rin sa sarili mo, who will profit from reading or study? So, sino nga ba magbe-benefit sa paggawa ng ating study, sa pagbabasa ng ginawa nating research? Yung mga estudyante ba? In general public, future researchers. Yan, itanong mo na sarili mo, kung ikaw lang magbe-benefit sa study mo or walang magbe-benefit sa study mo, it's maybe time para i-rethink mo yung research na yan. So, next. So, formulating a research problem. So, ito na yung parte ng research kung saan gagawin mo na talaga yung actual na pag-iisip ng problem na nire-resolve ng research mo. So, ang nagagawa nito is binibigyan ng, sabihin natin, purpose yung study mo na naiintindihan sa sarili mo at sa mga magbabasa. So napaka-essential nito para malaman mo, and ang mga magbabasa, kung ano nga ba yung goal and yung objective na research mo, and kung anong bagay ba yung masusolusyonan ang study mo. So, next. So, firstly, specify your research objectives. So, sa ibang mga paper, imbis na gumagawa ng research questions, meron kang research objectives. So, ang research objectives, first and foremost, is isa siyang statement kung saan ina-outline ng paper kung ano yung balak niyang gawin sa balak mong alamin. Excuse me. So, a clear statement that defines all objectives can help you conduct and develop effective and meaningful research. So, kung meron ka ng research objectives, mas madadali ang magkahanap na research problem. So, the research objectives are a few goals that will help you keep your study relevant. This statement also helps professors evaluate the questions your research project answers and different methods that you use to address them. Number 2, review its context or environment. So, bago mo bago mo mabuo yung research problem mo, alamin mo muna kung saan siya nanggaling. So excuse me. So it's necessary to work hard to define and test all kinds of environmental variables to make your project successful. This step can help you define if the important findings of your study will deliver enough data to be worth considering. So, dito inaalam mo lang kung kung saang particular na field nanggaling yung problem mo. Is it in the medical field, technological field, linguistics, anything, anywhere. Pero kailangan mo muna alamin kung saan siya manggagaling and kung anong environment yung i-explore mo. Next, explore its nature. So, may iba't iba tayong mga research problems na na-encounter na. Yung iba madali, yung iba medyo complicated, yung iba nandiyan lang medyo sa batnang gitna ng madali at hindi. So nagva-vary naman yung nature ng isang research problem depending on its complexity. Nagva-vary yan sa variables na nandun sa problem na yon, sa relationships. Yung iba naman is completely unrelated talaga sa magiging research mo. Still a problem, pero hindi siya related. So, kailangan muna natin alamin kung ano nga yung nature ng problema to, ng ating research problem, para alam natin kung makokonekta talaga natin to sa ating research, ating study. Number 4, determine variable relationships. So scientific, social, and other studies often focus on creating a certain sequence of repeating behaviors over time. Completing the entire process involves identifying the variables that affect possible solutions to your research problem, deciding on the degree to which you can use and control all of them for study purposes, determining functional relationships between existing variables, and choosing the most critical variables for a solution of your research problem. So, ito na i-encounter na natin to every time nagagawa tayo ng isang research paper, which is hanapin natin yung variables na ating research. Familiar naman ata kayo doon kasi lagi natin na-encounter yung dependent, independent variables and all of that. So, in determining variable relationships, hanapin mo lang yung mga variables sa research problem mo na makaka-apekto sa paggawa mo ng solusyon sa research problem na yun. Next, pagdedesisyonan mo kung gaano mo kalalim o kontrolin or bibigyan ng change yung mga variables na yun to make your solution for that problem. Next is determine mo lang kung ano yung relasyon ng variables ng problem mo between each other. And sunod is pipiliin mo yung pinaka-importante mong variables. Yung pinaka-importante na yung pinaka-critical lang, pinaka-importante kailangan mo para sa research mo. Next is anticipating the possible consequences of alternative approaches. So there are different consequences that each course of action or approach can bring, and that's why you need to anticipate them. So, So that could be as early as deciding your research design or your research method as stated earlier. Kapag ginawa mo ba to, may masama bang mangyayari? Pag ginawa mo ba to, mas better ba yung results na makuha mo? So kailangan anticipate mo yun, alamin mo, or possible na sabihin nating i-assume mo na pag ginawa mo to, may mangyayari. Next. So, structuring your research problem. So, this is the ito na yung parte ng study mo kung saan meron ka ng problem, pero hindi mo alam kung paano siya isusulat or isi-state sa paper mo. So, these are some tips, techniques, and some facts about creating a research problem on the context of doing it in your paper. So these are the guidelines on structuring your research problem. First, use a single sentence. Isa lang. Most often na nakikita natin sa mga research paper, kaya sa mga nakita natin online, is kapag may nakita ang sabihin nating problem statement or yung SOP, it's always mahabang paragraph or isang buong paragraph explaining something na hindi mo naman maintindihan. But the truth of the matter is, you can find the problem in the research in just a single sentence dun sa paragraph na yun or dun sa napakaraming paragraph na yan. Mapinpoint mo lang yung isang single sentence na yun and you can definitely define kung ano yung problem na sinusolusyonan na research na yan. So this is the same when creating one. Just using single sentence, the best possible sentence you can construct to define kung ano yung problem ng research mo. Use wordings such as the purpose of the study and anything similar to it. Very obvious, it kind of gives away kung ano nga yung research problem mo by explicitly saying the purpose of the study. So anything similar dyan, it's gonna be a very easy way para ma-state mo yung research problem mo. If using a theory, state the theory you plan to test. Again, very obvious. Kung may ginagamit kang something theoretical, anything theoretical actually, sabihin mo muna yun. You need to state that para alam ng mga readers mo kung ano yung backbone ng ginagawa mong research problem. Next, use quantitative words. For example, relate, compare, or describe to describe the relationships between variables. So, sa previous previous topic natin kanina, sinabi natin yung pagdedetermine ng variable relationships. So, dito sa variable relationships, kapag sinistate mo na siya sa iyong mismong paper, it's easier to use the words related to or compared to or described as para ma-describe mo yung relasyon ng mga variables sa isa't isa. Next. Present the independent variable and present the dependent variable. So, ito yung isa sa mga pinaka-familiar tayo, which is creating the and So, ito yung iba't ibang parte ng research problem mo kung saan they correlate with each other. So, ipapresenta mo lang tong dalawang to kasi napaka-importante nito sa research mo. Next, identify, control, and or mediating variable. So, this is something na hindi natin masyado na-encounter, which is yung mediating variable or in some cases yung control variable. So, ano nga ba ang mediating variable? So, ito yung mga Hello po? Nawala po ba ako?
Diretso. Oo. Hindi naman.
Okay. So, ano nga ba ang mediating variable? So, mediating variable is a variable na kung saan ito yung nag-explain kung paano nakaka-relate ang independent and independent variable to each other. Hindi siya isang statement, hindi siya isang, sabihin natin, hindi siya isang word or hindi siya makikita sa isang paper. But it is an entity within that problem na nag-explain kung paano nakaka-relate ang independent variable sa dependent variable. So, also include the research site and the participants. Again, very obvious. Kung meron ka niyan, ilagay mo sa pag-state na research problem mo para alam ng mga tao kung ano yung basehan and kung saan nanggaling research problem mo. Next. So, meron tayong tatlong types ng quantitative research questions. Ito yung pinakita ko kanina. Na quantitative words. So, it's describe, compare, and relate. So, sabihin ko lang kung ano yung purpose ng tatlong to. First of all, describe. Use describe to state the results of your variables. You use compare to compare two or more groups on the independent variable in terms of the dependent variable. You use relate to give a relationship between two or more variables. So next. So you write the quantitative research question similarly to that of a quantitative purpose statement. Here are some ways to do that. So to write a quantitative research question, first, pose a question. Maghanap ka muna ng tanong. Simulan mo sa how, what, or why. Tapos, kapag meron ka na ng how, meron ka na ng what, meron ka na ng why, ilagay mo na yung variables mo, yung independent, dependent, mediating, or control variables mo. Then next, next slide. So yun, meron ka na ng how, meron ka na ng what, meron ka na ng why. Specify mo na yung variables mo. Next, gamitin mo yung words na sinabi natin kanina, describe, compare, or relate para magbigay connection between sa iba't ibang variables na pinecify mo kanina. And lastly, you indicate the participants in the research site for the study. Again, tulad ng kanina, kung meron kang participants or kung merong research site na pinanggalingan ng research problem na yon or ng study na yon, i-indicate mo rin siya. So, next. So ngayon, nakahanap ka na ng research problem mo. So, sa isang research paper, napaka-importanting i-formulate to. Lalo na sa early stages pa ng study nyo. For instance, literature reviews, researches, and studies of previous experiments are likely to provide you with very vague areas of interest. So, this is something na naranasan ko, which is trying to find a research problem in some existing researches. So magbabasa-basa ka ng iba't ibang studies, iba't ibang research papers, pero hindi ka makahanap ng research problem mo. So here are some tips para ma-define mo yun.
Okay.
So what to take into account when creating a research problem? You take into account that agreement among readers that a research problem is very broad. So this is something na hindi na kailangang sabihin, and yet alam natin lahat, or at least parang familiar tayo lahat na ang mga research problem commonly ay hindi sila very specific. Merong broadness diyan, pwede mo pang palawakin yung research problem na yan. And that is a very familiar concept para sa ating lahat, readers man or researchers man. Next, suggestions that you have a certain misunderstanding of the chosen matter. So, excuse me. So sa pagpa-formulate ng research problem mo, it's commonly a very, sabihin natin, usual conception na itong problem na pinipili mong alamin or i-research, may hindi tayo naiintindihan doon. Meron tayong hindi pa nalalaman about that certain topic, certain matter, certain concept, or certain theory na gusto nating alamin. So you take that into account when defining your research problem. Ano nga ba yung misunderstanding natin sa theory na to? Pero yung isang part ba na to dapat ganito? Yung isang part ba nito dapat hindi ganito? So yung isang concept or isang thought dun sa particular topic mo, i-take that, tignan mo kung ano hindi natin nalalaman about doon, tignan mo kung hindi natin naiintindihan doon, and that could be a very good research problem. So next, advice for narrowing your subject down or thinking of a better way to focus it. So sabihin natin meron kang topic, meron kang concept, meron kang theory na pwede gusto mong alamin. So itong specific, tandaan natin lagi, tulad ng sabi kanina, na very broad ang research problem. So, another way para makahanap ka ng isang research problem is maghanap ka ng paraan para mas better mapaliit mo pa yung scope ng gusto mong, yung bagay na gusto mong i-research. Sabihin natin na COVID-19 again. COVID-19, very prominent concept sa mundo natin ngayon. Sabihin natin COVID-19. When you just say na your research problem is COVID-19, like I said, it's very broad. It could be cure for COVID-19 or ways to prevent COVID-19 infections, or simply just gaano karaming tao may COVID-19 na sa Pilipinas. Something as simple as that is a research problem. So, something to help you formulate that research problem is palawakin nyo muna yung research problem. Alamin nyo kung ano yung mga underlying questions and problems na may encounter mo in that certain topic. So, you got COVID-19. Branch out pa natin yan. You got ways to prevent COVID-19. You got how many people in the world have been affected by COVID-19. You have cure for COVID-19 kung meron na or wala pa. Ganun. So, out of those broad perspectives nung research topic na yon, ifo-focus down mo pa, paliliitin mo pa, pakikitirin mo pa yung topic na gusto mong i-research. So, sabihin natin dun sa gaano karaming tao sa mundo may COVID-19. Palitin pa natin. Gaano karaming tao sa Pilipinas ang may COVID-19. Palitin pa. Gaano karaming tao sa Manila ang may COVID-19. Pwede nyo pang palitin. Gaano karaming tao sa neighborhood nyo yung may COVID-19. So that is a problem, as kahit sobrang liit lang ng scope na yun, as long as it's within the topic and you focus down and focus it down on similar topics, but in a more specific way. That is a very good way to define a research problem. Next. Specifics about misunderstanding. Again, tulad na sabi ko kanina, an easy way to define your research problem is alamin mo kung ano hindi mo maintindihan about a certain topic. So, ang sinasabi lang dito is yung hindi mo maintindihan sa certain topic na yun, alamin mo kung ano yung specific na bagay na hindi mo maintindihan sa isang topic na yun. Ayun lang yan. So, next, a consensus that your research question is very narrow and interesting ideas to make it more. General. So, ito naman. Hello, nawala po ba ako, ma'am? Hello po.
Sige, diretso.
Okay po. So, ang isang way para ma-define mo yung yung research problem mo is you have a concept na pag-usapan natin kanina, you narrow it down to a more specific topic para i-research. Although very specific na siya, tulad ng sabi dito, very narrow na yung research question mo, research problem mo. You can add other interesting ideas para mas maging malawak siya. Mas maging general yung ginagawa mo research. And so comments about its clarity and phrasing. So you take this into account kapag gumagawa ka ng research problem, kaya nabasa ng professor mo sa research yung pag-state mo ng research problem mo. If meron siyang any comment or any statement about sa way na pag-state mo ng research problem, kaya hindi siya clear, hindi may grammatical errors or may kulang, i-take that into account kapag sinusulat mo siya. So as you can improve it more. So, next. Ayan. So, ngayon, may nagawa ka ng statement na research problem mo. So, paano mo malalaman if it is a good research problem statement? So, these are some ways para malaman mo yun. First of all, your question allows for a number of potential answers. So, alam naman natin na pag may tanong ka, may sagot yan. Siyempre. So, if your research question does not allow for a potential answer, and it's not a good research question. Because kaya ang gumagawa na research para maasagot ng isang tanong. And if yung research question mo mismo is hindi masagutan, di ba't mo pa research yun? Kumbaga, ayun yung logic behind that thought. So next, it's testable, flexible, and open-ended. So, sinasabi ko na ngayon, if hindi mo pwedeng i-test yung question mo, if hindi siya pwedeng i-experimentan, it's gonna be very hard for you to answer that question.
Correct.
So, it should be flexible and open-ended. What does that mean? Relating to the first statement kanina, your question allows for a number of potential answers. That means that your question must be open-ended. Hindi lang may nakuha kang isang sagot, ibig sabihin na, ayun lang yung pwedeng sagot doon. May nakuha ang dalawang sagot, hindi maibig sabihin doon na yung dalawang yun, ayun lang yung sagot sa research question mo. So, a good research problem can open up different varieties, different avenues of answers and solutions para sa tanong na yun. Next is you have the evidence necessary to address it. Again, if hindi mo kayang sagutin yung question, if hindi mo kayang patunayan yung isang theory mo sa research mo, then it's gonna be very hard to conduct the research. So, kung meron kang research problem pero wala ang enough na evidence, wala ang enough results para ma-address, masagutan yung yung tanong na yon, then it's not a very good research problem. Next, it's possible to break it into resolvable parts. Ayan. So, it's possible to break it into resolvable parts. This is not something very common sa atin, lalo no high school, pero there are research questions or research problems na pwede mo pang split apart into different research problems or different research questions. With each individual research question, pwede mong bigyan ng iba't ibang klaseng sagot. So, this is, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na broad ang mga research problems kasi they could still be broken down into different parts, different parts, different concepts, each with their own answers and each with their own solutions. Next. It's precise and clear. So, very self-explanatory. Siyempre, dapat na naiintindihan natin. Siyempre, dapat klaro. Siyempre, dapat naiintindihan ng lahat ng mga tao, lahat na nagbabasa, ikaw man, or other people. So, you don't use any vague terms that require definitions. So, it's a very helpful tip kapag gumagawa ng research problem to kasi most often than not, pag gumawa ng isang research, madaming magbabasa nun. Or at least, meron pa rin magbabasa nun na wala masyadong alam sa field of research mo. So, to avoid any kind of misunderstanding or to promote na mas naiintindihan ng mga tao yung mga research natin, paggagawa tayo ng isang statement, subukan natin gumawa ng isang statement na yung mga terms is alam natin. Alam ng karamihan per se. So, it's suitable for the length of your paper. So, So, syempre, meron kang time limit sa paggawa ng paper mo. So, kung mahaba-haba time limit mo, syempre, mas mahaba yung magagawa mong paper. Pero if very congested lang yung time limit mo, yung deadline mo, syempre, hindi gaano ka haba yung magagawa mo research paper niyan. So, ito, tatanungin mo sa sarili mo, yung research question ba na gusto kong sagutin, yung research problem ba na gusto kong solusyonan, kasya ba within the time frame ng paper na to?
Correct.
Kung masyadong malawak yung research problem mo, like
Concise.
very large scale surveys or very large scale experiments, tapos yung deadline mo is 2 months, syempre mahirap yan. Hindi mo matatapos yan. Whereas binigyan ka ng 2 years of research time, tapos yung research mo is very small scale lang. Sayang yung oras, di ba? So, match your research questions then dun sa time frame na meron ka sa paggawa ng paper na yan. You can explain why your solutions matter. So, meron nga tayong sinusolusyon ng mga problema sa ating society. So, kahit hindi sa context ng ating society, kahit context lang ng field nyo, kahit sa technological field lang or sa medical field, any field, if hindi mo ma-prove na yung mga solution mo doon is may bearing sa field or sa research topic nyo, and it's then your research problem ay may problema. Kasi any good research problem has a solution na nagmamatter both dun sa problem na ina-address mo and dun din sa field na pinagagalingan ng research na yan. Next, you made premises explicit. So yung iba't ibang concept, iba't ibang thoughts, iba't ibang nating theory na nakasaad dun sa ating research problem, you made them explicit, meaning sinabi mo, explain mo kung ano siya, kung paano siya nagwo-work into the research problem, then you have a very good research problem statement. Next. So the next topic is research concepts and variables.
So now, tapos na po tayo sa about the research problem. We will be now tackling about research concepts and variables. So dito, ang overview po nito is all about variables, yung mga hypotheses and such po. So dito na po siya papasok. Now let's first talk about variables. So syempre po, sa research, hindi naman po pwedeng wala tayong variables, no? So yung variables po natin, usually it could be a person, it could be a place, or it could be a thing. So in other terms po, so variables could be your respondents, your participants, etc. po. So, hindi po magiging concrete yung research po natin kung wala po tayong variables. So, let's say for example, you are researching for education system of the Philippines. So, or in Manila po, gano'n. So, ano po yung magiging variables natin? So, it could be your teachers, could be the teachers, or could be the students or principals in different schools or universities. So, yun po yung magiging possible variables. Now, so variables represents a class of outcomes that can take more than one value, and the more precisely that a variable is measured, so the more useful the measurement is. So, based po sa, based po dati sa thesis advisor ko po last senior high, kailangan po mas marami pong variables, mas better po kasi mas maging solidified po yung research nyo, and mas makikita po talaga kung ano po yung outcome nung magiging data or yung research nyo po, para po mas ma-prove po lalo na kung ano po yung research. And usually po, hindi naman po pwedeng ikaw lang po mag-isa yung nag-observe ng research nyo. For example, kung sobrang laki po ng research nyo and kailangan nyo po ng maraming respondents or participants, hindi naman po pwedeng ikaw lang yung nag-observe nun na it is based on your guess or like based on your opinion. Hindi po pwedeng gano'n. So, dapat marami pong tao yung nagsasurvey or nagpa-participate po dun sa research nyo. So, variables also can be classified and categorized into groups. So, they have similar characteristics and belongs to different categories or groups. So, let's say for example, yung hair color, it could be red, brown, or yung height. So, to be 5 or 6, ganun po. Or it could be age. So, minsan nasa range po ng age would be 10 to 15, 20 to 25, 30 to 35, and so on po. Now, so when we say observed value po, so kapag let's say na you have gathered your survey, so nakapag-survey ka po, nakapag-interview ng respondents, or nag-experiment po kayo ng groupmates nyo, then in-experiment nyo po yung either plants or yung lugar. So, yun po yung yun po yung parang magiging observed value. So, kung ano po yung na-record and yung na-observe nyo po doon sa nakikita nyo po or sa nakuha nyo po, that is the observed value. So, usual po na statistical analysis po, yung observed value is, kung mini-measure nyo po siya through statistical figures po such as t-test, chi-square test, and such po, etc. Then, yung mga observed values na po yun, yung set na po yun po yung data nyo po. Now, data can be classified into 2 categories. So, we have the qualitative data and quantitative data. So, when we say qualitative data, so the values of variables are expressed in words or statements. So, an example po could be your civil status. So, it could be single, married, widowed, or separated. So, that's one example of qualitative data. And it is also known as categorical data. Next, we have is the quantitative data. So, from the word quantitative, so values of variables expressed po in numerical terms. So, could be age or population, temperature readings, height. So, ayun po yung mga quantitative data. And it is also called as numerical data. So, since under po tayo ng all about variables, we'll be discussing about types of variables. So, meron po iba't ibang klaseng variables, and kanina po na-mention na po yung iba po sa kanila. So, kanina po na-mention na po yung independent variable, then yung mediating variable. So, ayan. Under po siya ng types of variable. So, first po we have is the discrete and continuous variable. So, pag sinabi pong discrete, finite number lang po yung tinitake niya and within a limited range. So, yun lang po yung parang keyword ng discrete po yung finite. So, variables that can take only a finite number of possible values within a limited range of values. So, let's say, for example, ng discrete, yung number of students in Bscs 33. So, masabi natin 35 lang tayo. So, it's a finite number. Then, kabalik naman siya ng continuous. So, pag continuous naman, infinite naman siya. So, variables that can take an infinite number of possible values within a range. So, an example po could be population ng world. So, yung population natin is either increasing or decreasing. May nanganganak, may namamatay. So, population is continuous. Then, we also have the base research is cost of gasoline, kasi cost of gasoline could increase, then pwede rin mag-rollback. So, continuous variable siya. Then next, we have is the dependent, then the independent variable. So, magkasama sila. So, ang dependent and independent, so meron silang cause and effect relationship. So, kapag so, ang dependent variables, ito yung nagpa-pertain sa effect. So, it represents the measure that reflects the outcomes of this research study. So, it could also be called as, outcome variable, result variable, and criterion variable. So, one example of dependent variable is below po here. So, nakalagay po dito is effect of parental involvement in school on children's grades. So, ang dependent variable natin yung children's grades. So, bakit yung children's grades yung dependent variable natin? So, yung children's grades, it says here na nakadepende siya doon sa involvement ng parents, no? So, kapag sinabi natin yung parents nakatutok sa students or nakatutok sa anak nila, yung possible na yung anak nila magkaroon ng mataas sa grades. or kapag tinuturuan ng maayos, di ba? So, or it could be na kapag si parent, hinahayaan lang si anak na siya lang yung sumasagot ng module niya, or kapag nagtatanong si children kay parent, pero itong si parent hindi pinapansin yung anak. So, possible na yung grades ng bata is hindi maging maganda. So, yun yung dependent variable in children. Then next we have is the independent variable. So, kung kanina ang dependent variable ay ang effect, ang independent variable naman ay yung cause. So, yun cause and effect relationships ng dalawa. So, it represents the treatments or conditions that the researcher has either direct or indirect controls over the dependent variables to test their effects on a particular outcome. So, yung value is independent of other variables. So, other terms for independent could be treatment variable, factor, and predictor variable. So an example here below is age differences in stress for people ages 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and 50 to 59. So here you have the independent variable. So yung age niya in 3 levels. So 30 to 39. So yun yung magiging independent variable dito. Yung age and then yung in 3 levels. So, let's say na when the researcher are not interested sa paghanap ng effects or ng dependent variable of one thing, pero interested sila on how variables are related, then there will be no independent variables. So, let's say here, for example, is the relationship between the amount of time a father spends with his children and his job performance. So, they're just looking at the effects, pero wala silang independent variables. So, they're both dependent. And interested lang sila how those variables are related to one another. So, here, sa example, related, kino-correlate lang nila yung between the amount of time father spends, pati yung, and his children, and his job performance. So, next type of variable is, may pa pala. So, here we have the factorial design. So, there could be more than one independent naman dito sa factorial design. So, based here on our figure, so, sa 2x2 nating factorial design, so, there are 4 possible categories na pwede ma-assign yung mga participants. So, merong 2 independent variable sa taas, so yung 2 bars per week and 4 bars per week. Then, another independent variable na isa, which is yung male and female. The next type of variable is the confounding variable. So, they are the so-called extra variables that are not accounted for, which can ruin research as it competes to explain the effect of the independent variable into the dependent variable. So, parang ano lang siya. As written here is extra, no? Parang wala lang siya. Parang saling ket-ket, ganun. So, here is an example of a confounding variable. So, we can see here na merong relationship yung activity level and yung weight gain. So kapag ang activity level mo is high, let's say na nag-exercise ka, then let's say walking, ganon, yung weight gain mo is parang hindi siya tataas. Then, let's say kapag kain ka lang ng kain, yung activity level mo, so tataas yung weight gain. Pero, may nakalagay na age. So, pagbabago yung research, magiging bago yung research mo at masisira yung research mo kasi ang fino-focus mo lang is yung activity level, then yung weight gain. Kapag nagsali ka ng age, ang mangyayari dyan, yung activity level mo, let's say, kapag ang mangyayari dyan, yung age mo babago dahil iba naman yung activity level per age at iba-iba rin naman yung weight gain niya per age. So, magkakaroon ng discrepancy dahil sa age. Then next we have is the control variable. So, to simply put, so yung control variables are constant and unchanged through the course of the experiment. So, variables in an experiment which are held constant in order to assess the relationship between multiple variables. So, one example is hypothesizing plants grow optimally at 4 hours of light a day. So, ang control variable nyo dyan is ang fertilizer level. And ang reason na nakalagay dito is, if plants are receiving different fertilizer levels, we may not know if the conclusion is correct based on our hypothesis. So, fertilizer level ang ating maging control variable doon sa example research. Then next we have is the extraneous variable. So, related to the dependent or independent variables that are not part of the experiment but could affect the results of the experiment. So, here we have the example of effects of television watching on achievement. Ang magiging extraneous variable niya ay ang television programs dahil yung television programs, the programs could be either positive or negative dun sa impacts on achievement kasi there are some programs na hindi siya ka-II or it's either positive, ganon, or it could be negative. Then we have is the moderator or intervening variable. So, I think ito rin po yung mediating variable. So, related to the variables of interest, so it could be whether independent and dependent, asking the true relationship between the independent and dependent variables. So, parang nakatago lang po yung true relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. So, one example is relationship between crime rate and ice cream consumption, and the moderator variable is temperature. So, bakit po? So, according sa reason is, temperature must be observed because it moderates the relationship. So, yung relationship ng, dahil because of this temperature, no, namamoderate yung relationship between crime rate and ice cream consumption dahil, let's say, for example, summer, marami yung consume ng ice cream and possibly na malaki rin yung, mataas din yung crime rate or mababa yung crime rate dahil sa init. Or kapag malamig yung panahon, pwede yung onti lang yung consumption ng ice cream or mataas yung crime rate dahil malamig yung panahon. So, ganun po yung moderator variable. So now that we discussed about all the types of variables and all about variables, magpo-proceed na po tayo sa hypothesis. So to simply put, hypothesis is an educated guess, or it is a statement of expectation or prediction that will be tested in a research. So I have a hypothesis is an educated guess. So its most important role is to reflect the general problem statement. So yung hypotheses usually there are two types of hypotheses and later we'll be discussing that. So the hypothesis is usually as is written here is it is an educated guess. So parang hinuhulaan mo muna kung ano yung mangyayari doon sa research nyo bago lumabas yung pinaka-result. Say, for example, may survey na, let's say survey, no? Let's say you're doing a research about significance between sa COVID-19, ganon. So, ano kaya yung possible na hypothesis doon sa research mo? So, pwedeng it could be there's a significant difference between the COVID-19 or kapag tumataas pa rin po yung mga nagkakasakit or mataas pa rin po yung naapektuhan ng COVID-19. So, that could be your hypothesis. Now, as mentioned po, there are two types of they're classified into two. So, first we have is the null hypothesis. So, it is defined as H sub O. So, it is considered as a statement of equality and it acts as a starting point and a benchmark against which the actual outcomes of a study will be measured. So, null, when we say null hypothesis, it is not a statistical relationship. So, and it is deemed true until proven wrong based on the data. So, here you have an example a research of average scores of 9th graders and 12th graders on the ABC memory test. So, ang magiging null hypothesis niya is there are no difference in the scores of 9th graders and 12th graders on the ABC memory test. So, whereas naman sa research hypothesis or also known as alternative hypothesis, so doon siya mas kilala, and it's defined by H sub 1, but usually, minsan, gumagamit kami ng H sub A. So, pag sabi naman na alternative hypothesis or research hypothesis, so it is a statement of inequality. So, there can be more than one research hypothesis for any one null hypothesis. So, lagi tayong tatandaan na kapag sa research, laging kasama ang null tsaka research or alternative hypothesis. Hindi pwedeng null hypothesis lang and hindi pwedeng research hypothesis lang yung nasa research natin. So, kailangan lagi silang magkasama. So, based dun sa title kanina, so, ito yung magiging yun ang magiging alternative hypothesis niya. So, difference in the scores of 9th graders and 12th graders on the ABC memory test. So, kapag let's say na hindi tinanggap yung null hypothesis, pwede tanggapin itong alternative hypothesis. So now, we will be discussing about the types of research hypotheses.
Wait lang, Princess.
Yes po, ma'am.
7:30 na kasi. 'Di ba ang ano natin is meron tayong 30 minutes na na maagang. Tama ba? Sana yung ating
Yes.
taga-remind. Ayan. So, itanong ko lang yung mahaba pa ba tong topic ninyo?
Opo, ma'am. Medyo
Okay,
mahaba pa po.
mahaba to. So, pwede kaya natin itong ituloy sa next meeting natin?
Yes po, pwede
Ayan,
po.
okay. So, tutuloy na lang natin, no? Yung dun dito dun kung saan tayo naputol, no? Anyway, kasi time na. Sige. So, meron ba kayong gustong ipa-assignment dito sa ating sa klase natin? Or magpa-early reading kayo dun sa ating ganon? Para ready sila dun sa sa natin. Meron kayong task na ibibigay sa mga klase ninyo.
Magpahinga lang po, ma'am.
Magpahinga.
Opo.
Oo nga naman. Kasi weekend na. O yan, magpahinga daw kayo kasi next, maraming isasalpak uling information sa atin. Ayan, okay. So, rest muna. Okay. O, sige. So, doon tayo mag-end. Wait lang. Yung natin ay saan tayo nag-end? Dito tayo sa Group 5 Research Methodology, Unit 3. Para po dun sa topic, no? Ayan. Unit 3, sila yung Group 5. Yung topic nila is yung Research Methodology. Doon sa ating attendance, yan po yung ilalagay nyo, Unit 3, no? Which is, hindi pa tayo tapos, nandun pa rin tayo. So, itutuloy yan next meeting, no? Okay. So, meron pa po ba kayong question dun sa ating diniscuss ngayon or anything na you would like to add dito sa ating discussion sa klase? Ayan. So, pinapakita ko lang yung ating para dito sa ating video, no? So, habang iniisip nyo kung meron kayong tanong, i-confirm ko lang yung ating attendance. So, we started, I think, 31, no? So, now, tayo ay umabot hanggang 34. Ayan. So, 34 yung attendance natin. So, bali 33, kasama ako. Kaso, merong mga napuputol eh. So, hopefully, mas maayos yung ating attendance next time. Okay. So, meron pa po ba tayong clarification and question? Ayan, dun sa ating na-discuss. Again, yung topic dun sa attendance, no, pila pa natin sa GC, Unit 3, Research Methodology, no? Okay. So, kung wala na po, ay di happy weekend. Ayan. Sabado, let's enjoy our rest. Yun din ang bilin sa atin ng ating Group 5, no? Para ready tayo next next week sa simula ng ating Monday, no? Okay, so Okay, yun lamang po. Maraming salamat for coming today, no? Ayan. Happy weekend.
Thank you po,
Okay,
ma'am.
Thank you po,
thank
ma'am.
Thank you po,
Thank you
ma'am.
po, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you po.
Okay.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Alright. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you rin. Ayan. Ayan. Okay, i-end ko na yung ating